Good evening, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. Bear with us.
Good evening, UConn Nation. My name is Jodi Kaplan. I'm Assistant Vice President of Alumni Relations. But more importantly, I'm your host for this evening. Welcome to our cooking demo, Cooking with Beer. This is our first ever crossover event between our cooking club and our 1881 series. This is a night of firsts, ladies and gentlemen. Not only is it our first crossover event, but it's also the first time we are live at a virtual event. That's right, we're live in the kitchen of Willimantic Brewing Company. Our great friend and alum, David Wollner, class of '82, has lent us the kitchen for this evening. But more importantly, he's lent us his executive chef. So we have the expertise of Chef Will Deason. And we'll be hearing from Will in just a few minutes. Will is basically going to be our main course for tonight. See what I did there? Main course. Come on now. Another first is that we're going to try out a lot of new equipment. This new equipment may allow us to offer hybrid events in the future. So with this new equipment, you'll need to bear with us if there's any technical difficulties along the way. Just let us know and we'll try to fix those as soon as possible. Speaking of technical difficulties, I'm joined by my tech-savvy counterpart, Josh Prue. A lot of you may know Josh. He's our Senior Director of the Alumni Engagement Team and the creator of the 1881 series. But more about that later. Josh is working our cameras in production tonight. I don't really know what he's doing behind the camera, but he does, so that's what's important. Before we begin, I want to take care of a few housekeeping details for you. First and foremost, we have closed caption available. If you are in need of those services, visit the Zoom toolbar and select the CC and activate your subtitles. Secondly, the chat is open. So right now, put in the chat where you're listening in from. And also, feel free to speak amongst yourselves during the event through the chat. Third, you'll see a question and answer area. Feel free to put in questions throughout and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Fourth, I want you to know that this program will be recorded. So if you miss anything or you didn't buy the ingredients for all the dishes, you'll have the recording tomorrow and you'll be able to look through this again and cook with Chef again. Fifth, it's better for your viewing tonight to be on speaker view versus gallery view. It will give you a better experience. And sixth, last but not least, relax, channel your inner Julia Childs, pick up your favorite glass of wine or beer from WilliBrew and enjoy the evening and let's get cooking. So now I'm going to introduce our chef, Chef Will Deason. I'm going to say a few things about Chef Will before he gets started, but he grew up in North Carolina and Connecticut, and he's the son of a chef. His mom was a chef. So that is what got him interested in cooking to begin with. That interest led him to a degree in culinary arts at Johnson & Wales. Chef has been in fine dining, barbecue, fry stands, catering, and even retirement communities. Chef Will joined WilliBrew in 2003, and this is what he has to say about his experience. Working with owner brewer David Wollner at Willimantic Brewing Company has been the most interesting and fun experience I've had in my 10 years of cooking. Cooking with fresh beers has opened a whole new world of cooking to me and exposed me to many new and exciting flavors. I look forward every day to what new beers will come my way to incorporate my dishes here at the Willimantic Brewing Company. If that's not a perfect segue to our Cooking with Beer session, I don't know what is. Let's take it away, Chef Will. Teach us about this.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. It's always fun to get to show people new, exciting things for them to learn. The first thing that we're going to start with today is our beef stew.
Sounds good.
Our beef stew that we do here, I use, a lot of times I'll use our own quarters, but Guinness is the most common one that everyone can find. Anyone can go to any store, pretty much package store, and get a Guinness beer. So that's what we're going to use today in this dish.
So just any drought, any stout will work?
Yeah, as long as it's not too hoppy flavored there's certain ones that are flavored certain ways.
Okay.
You just want a basic one, a porter or stout. So that's what we're gonna use. I imagine you guys have already seen the recipe, so you guys all have your mise en place together, which means all your items that we're gonna cook with our onions, peppers, our onions, celery, carrots, potatoes, salt, pepper, flour, meats. So I'm just gonna walk you through how I do this. I start with a bowl of flour. I'll add some salt and pepper to that to season the flour. This is what we're going to toss the beef with, the cubes of beef to saute them.
Just all-purpose flour?
Yep, all-purpose flour is fine. Don't be shy with the salt and pepper either, but don't overdo it. I'm also going to turn on my stove back here just to get my pot a little warm for me to sear properly. I'm going to ask you to pull my beef out of the fridge over there, please.
Does this make me a sous chef?
Yeah, definitely. You follow directions, so yes. This is our cubed beef that I have. I use sirloin. You can use pretty much any cut you want when it comes to beef stew. A lot of times you use tougher cuts, so that way when you can utilize your tougher cuts. You're not using for steaks or things on your grill. Because you're going to cook it down, and the more you cook it, the more tender it'll become.
That's what I was going to ask. The longer it simmers, the tougher the cut you want. So
yeah, so that way it's a good bite. You don't want it to be mush. You wouldn't want to use tenderloin filet mignon in here because once you cooked it for about an hour and a half, you would just basically have like pulled beef inside your beef stew instead of cubed beef. You're going to toss this like this. Make sure that the flour covers all your meat evenly. And from here, what I'm going to do.
So how thick a coating do you want on there?
You don't want to just completely cover all sides, not showing any red, but you don't want to be caked on there or anything like that. So from here, I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to my pan and back here.
So when you say little bit, for those of us who like to measure things, what would that be?
When it comes to
the oil
in there, I would put about 3 tablespoons worth of oil in here.
Okay.
You want to get that till it's almost to a smoking point. The smoking point means what happens, it smokes right before it'll flash into a fire, which you don't want that to happen. But you just want to get it nice and hot. Depending on how thick your pot is will depend how long that will take for it to also get hot. From there, I like to take my beef. I'm not going to just dump it in there because you don't want to have clumps of flour in there. So with that, you're going to gently place your beef in there. You might have to add a little bit more oil, depending, because you want to make sure that it completely covers the bottom of your pan while you're adding in your beef, which isn't a big deal if you add it while you're cooking. But you just want to make sure the bottom of the pan has a nice layer of oil on there.
If it doesn't, would it burn it?
If it doesn't, you're more likely to burn it. And also, your oil and your flour that's on your meat will be used as a thickening agent while you're cooking in your cooking process. So that way your stew will come out nice and thick when you're finished.
And it's okay for it to pile on? It doesn't have
it's
to
okay. You can pile it on in there and then move it around with a spoon if it's a little bit more convenient, which is what I'm doing now. So that way I can show you guys a little bit better with what I'm doing.
Chef, if you could go a little bit slower so that our home cooks can keep up.
So here is our beef in the pan. I'm just stirring it around in the oil. So that way all sides of the beef are browned. So you're going to let that sear for a few minutes, and then you guys can catch up with the process too of your own of searing your beef for a few minutes.
Can we talk about searing for a minute?
We sure can.
So all my knowledge of cooking comes from Gordon Ramsay and Hell's Kitchen and MasterChef. So you can see how educated I am.
Oh, those are educational shows if you really pay attention and you just don't look at the banter that goes on through it.
They talk a lot about the perfect sear. You always want to get the perfect sear.
Yep.
What does that really mean?
It means high temperature. You want to have your oil to a nice high temperature so that way when your protein or vegetables hit your pan, you hear that sizzle sound. You don't want it to be too hot because then it'll burn it. But you just want that perfect temperature that just gives you the nice browning, which we're getting right here, you see. And you see not all the pieces are all facing the same direction. It doesn't matter. You just keep stirring. And as you keep stirring, it'll properly brown all the way around all of your product. And you can also see by doing this, your oil is starting to thicken with your flour, which is making a roux in there.
Point it to the camera. Show the camera needs to see the beauty here.
So you can see in there how thick it is. You see the nice seared. Like I said, it doesn't matter if it's all perfectly seared everywhere at this point. You're searing all the points now. And you'll make up for those spots that you missed as you keep stirring.
So you talk about the perfect temperature. I know that gas is always the way to go, but for those of us with electric appliances, can you get a perfect temperature?
You can, but it's a lot more tricky with that. A lot of times it's not as consistent. You don't have as much of a consistent heat. It doesn't dissipate the same. And also it's a little harder on a stove that's a glass top or even electric, the old school electric ones, that you're moving your pan back and forth like this, because you could scratch up your glass top or break it. Also with the other ones, you'd end up moving around your wired heating elements on the bottom. So in a restaurant, obviously there's lots of stuff happening all the time. The style of the range is usually a gas stove with the a little bit more structure going on the top to bang things on, move things around. So with there, at this point, you can see my beef is all seared all the way around.
How is everybody doing with their sears? You can put your information right in chat.
So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add the onions that are diced. I said 1-inch cubes. Honestly, it's your own prerogative of how chunky you'd like your soup to be. You can make them a little bit smaller. You could make them a little bit larger. That's the joy of cooking. You make it your own and what you're comfortable with. If you're wanting to make this in a hurry, you'd make the vegetables smaller. You'd make the cubed beef also smaller. That will speed up your process of making this a little
so we've got carrots, onions, and celery in here.
Again, folks want to see a little bit of folks want to see a little bit more of the browning. They have to catch up a little bit.
Okay, not a problem.
So show them the browning a bit.
So you can see how brown my product is here. It still has a little bit of red you can see to it. Like you see, it's very rare, but it's just seared around the outside to keep the juices in and the flavors in.
So while we're waiting for the home cooks to get their searing done, one of the things that you hear talked about all the time is when you're chopping anything, you want it all to be the same size so that the cooking is even.
Exactly.
What are some techniques that a home cook, an amateur chef could use to improve their knife techniques?
Practice.
And their knife skills.
Practice, practice, practice.
So there's no secret ingredients to this to make it easier, faster?
No, it's practice, and it's also just paying attention to what you're doing. You never want to cut off your fingertips. So a good secret is when you cut things, you put your fingers on the cutting board. When you have your fingers on your product, you're going to curve them in like this. They call it the claw. And with that, you take your knife, and when you cut down, you're not going to hit your fingertips. And that's the most common thing that's cut, which I heard earlier before you were here, that your first time that he had you cut something, you had a slight accident. So
I was going to say,
make sure no knives were next to you.
There could have been an issue that, you know.
I was going to say, folks that might have attended our 1881 mixologies, Jodi sliced her finger open while garnishing an old fashioned, actually.
But once the tourniquet was done on my finger, I was back being the supportive
you never
staff
knew she was down. That's true. You never knew she was down.
No fingers were lost in creating that drink.
So my next thing I'm going to add to it is I have fresh cut rosemary.
How are people doing with their sears? Is everybody okay?
Looks good so far.
All right. So I have my rosemary here that I took and I just rough chopped. Nothing fancy. Just make sure every piece is at least cut in half, maybe a third.
Okay, now wait a minute. Bring that rosemary back. So we just take it off of the stem.
So what I'd like, well, I'll show you what I like to do. I take my rosemary, you kind of pull it backwards.
Okay.
When you get up to the top, it's a little softer up there. So up there, you got to kind of pick through a little bit more.
But you want every leaf.
Yeah, you want to get up every leaf you can.
It smells delicious.
Yep. From there, I take those.
And here's these knife
just
skills.
kind of rough chop it. Remember, keep those fingers bent. Keep those fingernails to the cutting board. You can see I have my rough chop. Let's add to the rest of my rosemary. I'm just going to add, I'd say about an ounce to it. A good pinch. This is a good pinch to me. And I'm just adding that in there so that way.
I'm going to say ounce.
I'm just going to add that in there so that way when my vegetables are sweating, the juices from the rosemary is going to mix with the vegetables, and that's going to bring all your flavors together in there that we're looking for.
So vegetable sweating, what does that mean? I've never heard that before.
As the heat rises here, the heat comes in, which causes steam, which causes them to sweat. The heat causes the vegetables to sweat. The condensation of the vegetables comes out, which makes them sweat.
Okay. And is that all softening them as they go?
Exactly. And a good trick that I like to do is watch your onions while you cook this, because when your onions become translucent, means they're kind of see-through slightly. That means that pretty much all your vegetables are done. That way you're not having to poke at the carrots and things like that, because those can still stay a little hard because you're going to cook it for a long period of time after this. It's going to simmer for a while.
And you had said to me that this particular beef stew is much better the next day because it lets the flavors come in.
I'm a strong believer with that, with about 95% of the soups that I make. I always believe you make your soup, you put it to the side, let it cool overnight, take it out, reheat it the next day. You bring it up to 160 degrees and let it cook for about 10 minutes there, take it off, serve, and it's fantastic.
All right, let's go one step further with that. How good is it freezing it in serving sizes? If you want to pick a lot.
Fantastic. And if you want to do that, you want to cut your cubes of beef no smaller than 1 inch, because if you cut them smaller, when you freeze it and then reheat it again, it'll break down the proteins, which will make it so you don't have your nice cubes and your nice bites of meat.
So bigger is better.
I mean, it'll still be good, but it just won't have that mouth appeal that people look for with beef stew a lot of times, with the nice chunks in there. I know on my recipe, I didn't write garlic in there, but a lot of times I just like to add garlic to things.
I mean, why
with this batch, I'll add 1 spoonful of chopped garlic, just regular chopped garlic. We'll just add it to this with the vegetables. That will just enhance a little bit more of the flavor that I'll be looking for my finished product.
I'm going to get all the joy from this that you people are cooking for that I'm going to get for not cooking. This is great.
So I'm going to bring this over and show you where I'm at now. So you can see it's just starting to stick slightly on the bottom, which is perfect. Your a little bit of moisture from your vegetables are causing it from completely sticking, but still you want to scrape the bottom a little bit and make sure you don't have any buildup of product on the bottom at all. And you can see the onions, they are starting to get just slightly translucent. Hopefully you at home, you're about where I am. If not, don't worry. We got quite some time with this. And again, you can go back and look things over after we make this.
I hope your houses are smelling good right now, everyone.
So with that, I'm going to put that back on the heat. And now we're going to start adding a few of the liquids, which are the beer, of course. And I have beef stock here. You can buy beef stock in the stores. You can get bouillon cubes. You can also just buy beef base and do a mix that way, or you can do it the old-fashioned way and get bones and cook them down and make your own stock. Myself here at the restaurant, for time, we use beef base. I mix it with water. You just got to watch the sodium when you buy those things. You want to pay attention to your ingredients that are in there and make sure you don't get something too salty, too many preservatives or something. Get a real natural one. But back to pouring the liquid in there. I have it asks for 2 cups. A can of Guinness is slightly under 2 cups, which isn't a big deal. That's the joy of cooking. You don't have to be exactly perfect when it comes to cooking. It's not like baking. You're going to pour that in your pan. You'll hear it start to bubble up and sizzle.
Did you say there was a rule when you cook with beer that?
Yeah, every time you touch beer or any alcohol to put in your drink, you got to put a little bit in the chef. I don't allow that at work here, but at home cooking, it's always something that you want to do.
I'm just here to help, Chef.
Yes. So you see, I poured the beer in there now. It's bubbling up a little bit. We're going to stir that around. That right there will pull any of the product that's sticking to the bottom of your pan off. That's called deglazing. I deglazed the pan when I added the liquid to it. You could also see the liquid in there, how thick it's already becoming. So we're starting to get that consistency that we're going to be looking for with the beef stew. With that, I'm going to add my beef stock to it.
So how thick do you want it to eventually get? Like not a soup and not a chili, somewhere in between?
It all depends. That's the joy of cooking also. It's what your palate looks for. My palate, I'm picky about the way that I want my beef stew, but someone else's beef stew might be a little bit different. Some people might like it, a consistency more of like that. That's just covers the spoon. You can kind of blow on the spoon, and when you do that, the liquid will ripple, which makes a rose effect. That's one way. I like to make mine a little bit thicker, but when you're starting at this point, obviously you're going to cook it for a while, so it's going to thicken while you cook. So don't look for your consistency at this point to be what you want at the end product. So with that now, I'm going to put that back on the stove.
So normally when you're not doing a cooking demonstration, how long would you keep this on the stove? Days?
Yeah. No, probably about an hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
A total cooking time from start to finish takes about an hour and a half. What I do here at the restaurant, we have another half hour of cooking that happens when we reheat. So I add that onto my cooking time a lot of times. So I cook it so it's around 90% done. I cool it quickly, put it in the walk-in. Then bucket it up, cover it up for the evening. Next day, my morning cooks will come in. They'll put it in a pot, slowly heat it up on the stove, and make sure it's the consistency that I'm looking for. If it's too thick, they might add a little bit more beef stock to it, or maybe a little bit more beer if they're into more of the beer taste. If it's too thin, you can thicken it up. You can either thicken it up with a cornstarch slurry. You could thicken it up with a roux, which is a flour and a butter mixture. Any arrowroot, anything like that, any products that you guys don't use at home to thicken your soups or sauces with, works just fine. I'm just going to add a little bit more of the.
Now, my understanding is roux could be its own session.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're kind of aiming for with this, is we're putting out all these fishing poles to catch you all to come back and watch different cooking segments that we could do across the board of things that we serve here at WilliBrew. At this point now, you want to add your diced potatoes to it. My potatoes I keep in water, obviously, and the carrots as well, but the potatoes I keep in water, clean water, because I've rinsed it out quite a few times. And I add that all directly into the mix here, water and all.
Does the water keep the color the way you want it? Is that
yeah, they won't turn gray on you, and they don't get kind of pithy and weird. Also, I like skins left on my potatoes. Some people, they don't. Certain soups I make, I might peel the potatoes, but a soup like this is more traditional, like home style, feel good cooking. So you don't want to kill yourself with all this prepping all this stuff. So you want to enjoy yourself as well. So if a little shortcut like that makes it a little more time for you to spend with a family, friends, or just having a beer, do that.
And so more water in is not going to affect.
No, because we're just going to cook it down. And that's the joy of cooking a stew like this, is that you can cook it till you get that taste you're looking for. I'm just giving it a quick stir just to make sure that everything is incorporated evenly with each other. And now with this, I'm going to move to a back burner, and I'm just going to let it cook on medium heat as we start talking about making a chocolate cake soon.
Now, was it on high heat or medium?
I had it on high heat the whole time I was doing that.
Okay.
Right now, I put it down to about a medium heat, just because I'm not going to be watching it all the time. and I don't want it to stick or something, or we get carried away with something and I turn around and, oh my goodness, my stew is burning. But just
That would wreck the whole segment,
Yeah.
you guys.
but just keep an eye on it while you're cooking. It's not something you have to continuously watch. Just every 5 minutes or so, just kind of glance over and give it a little stir and just make sure things aren't sticking. You can even walk away for 15, 20 minutes as long as you keep it on a low heat, controlled heat. And as it cooks and gets thicker, that's when you have to watch it more. At a point like this, it's very liquidy, so it's less of a chance for it to stick to the bottom and burn.
How's everybody doing? Is there any comments in chat about how you're doing, how it looks, how it smells? Is it easy? Is it hard? I mean, it's really easy for me.
The question that's come up is, do the potatoes go in before the squash?
The squash goes in at the end. The squash does not go in yet. My squash, I get in fresh butternut squash. I peel it, I boil it, I strain it, and I mash it. And when I do that, I bag them in plastic bags and keep them in my freezer for little shortcuts of things I need to do. At home, you don't have that opportunity. So if you just have squash that you've mashed, you can use that. If you want to use whole squash in there, that's also fine. You could do cube squash. I like to do the pureed squash because it adds to the palatability. And when it touches your tongue, it just gives you that creamier feeling a little bit more. And I don't have to add as much butter and things like that to it that make it more fattening. I'm always trying to think of healthier ways to eat.
A lot of comments about good smelling aromas. The kitchen smells great. So
fantastic.
Just to be clear, though, the potatoes are in, the squash is not.
All right. So now I'm going to step into my next realm, which is chocolate stout cake. The chocolate stout cake, I did send you guys with a recipe that you can follow. Or if you really like, just use your favorite cake recipe. If it's Duncan Hines out of a box, that's fine too. And that makes it even easier. You buy a boxed cake mix, chocolate cake mix. You basically follow the directions that are on the box. And when it comes to the water, 3/4 of that water, you're going to not add. And instead of that, you're going to add beer. So if it says add a cup of water, you add a 1/4 cup of water and you add 3/4 of a cup of beer.
So is that a rule we could follow for any time water isn't a recipe? We can just put beer?
Sometimes, and it's always worth a try. The best way to do it is test.
Do we have a question, Josh?
we do, yeah. One of the questions that came in was asking if the beer goes in before the beef or after.
I'm sorry.
Does the beer go in before the beef or after?
Before the beef or after the beef? You start with the beef, and then you go to the vegetables, and then you add your spices. Then you add your liquid, which is your beer and your beef stock.
Great, thank you. And for those
welcome.
curious why we're yelling at each other, we're yelling over a pass right now. So there's a loud exhaust fan right above Chef. You can see.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a little loud.
Yeah, so we're a little loud. That's a little loud, and when we're yelling back and forth about these things, it's kind of hard to hear. So we're all good.
Okay, beautiful.
So in terms of the cake,
Yep.
What Chef was just talking about with the cake mix is different than what you got on your recipe. So you can be using those dry ingredients for your recipe, doing it from scratch if you'd like.
Or you could just buy a box and go from there, which it's always good. You get home, you don't know what to do for dessert. You want to make people think you work and slaved real hard. You open up the cupboard, you got a box of Duncan Hines or whatever brand chocolate cake mix. You take that down, whip it up, do what I said with the water, with the ratios, and everyone thinks you made a fresh chocolate stout cake, which it is fresh. It just might be out of a box. I have my dry ingredients here. And when it comes to my dry ingredients for basically anything, I always sift it. That way you look for any impurities that are in there. You also, any clumps or things like that. You don't end up with your finished product with chunks of like white flour in there, like a white spot in your chocolate cake or something like that. So in a nice fine sifter, just kind of sift through real quickly.
If we can, there's a request that we pause for a moment so folks can catch up on finishing where they were the beef. This might be a good time for a commercial break, Jodi.
Yeah, so why don't we have a little conversation with the owner of Willimantic Brewing, WilliBrew, David Wollner. Come on over, David. So David,
welcome everybody.
First and foremost, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and for having Chef Will be our expert on site. So thank you.
Oh, no, of course. And, as you had mentioned, Will's been with us forever, and we've all grown together, and we've been cooking with beer for a very long time. And it's exciting anytime that we put the two things together, his mind, our beer. I don't know. It's pretty much, it's a win-win.
Now, David, as a class of 82 alum and an owner of a local place, you have been a fantastic partner to alumni relations for a long time. And it's just great to be able to get advice from you, get ideas from you, and work with you with the 1881 series and now with the Cooking Club.
Well, thank you. But a lot of that, of course, has to do with the Alumni Association and you and Josh and others that have, come up with ideas to try to pull us all together all over the world. We're always united, and these are great events to do it at. We've produced some beer. You've had events here. We've gone to Hartford, and this event's everywhere today. So it's wonderful. Thank you. We love the opportunity.
We're at about 14 states tonight, and we have alums from 1959 to 2020 representing all decades.
Oh, that's
so
excellent.
We've got quite a variety here. So in terms of WilliBrew brings up a lot of nostalgia for people. When we talk about Willimantic Brewing Company, alums smile and have memories. You were telling us the other day about how you got to this building and some of the nicknames of WilliBrew. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
So, class of 82, when I went to UConn, the drinking age was 18. Outside my dorm room window, which was in South Campus, there was a rock painted with JR Package Store's phone number on it. You could call. They would deliver to the room. They would cash your check, and then Pizarro's Pizza would deliver. Never did I think, other than home brewing at the time, would I ever be running a restaurant, let alone a brewery, and have been established now for 25 years. But we've been in business on Main Street in Willimantic. We started as an ice cream coffee shop deli in 1991 in the abandoned Capitol Theater here in town. We took over their lobby. And from that, we were able to expand and move across the street to an established restaurant called the Victorian Lady in 1994. Great owners there. He was part of a restaurant group in Hartford where Brown Thompson is, and now it's City Steam, another brewery took over. So we've seen the growth in the craft beer industry, from the early 90s, and now here we are, 2022, and we're still making beer. People are still drinking it. We have a gluten-reduced beer as our certified gold now, because again, you got to keep changing. But over the years, when we finally moved into this building, which was vacant since 1967, local business people bought it on Valentine's Day in 1996. They were regular guests of ours at our previous location at the Victorian Lady. We were a craft beer bar then. We tried to serve great food, and we put the two together, moved into this building. It took 11 months, 3 weeks from the day they bought it till we opened, and we've been going strong ever since. But that's why you mentioned, some of us call us Main Street. They call us the pub. Now it's WilliBrew, Willimantic Brewing Company. Is kind of a little too much to say. So, you change your logo a little bit, become a little bit more hip. We have an Instagram handle and Twitter and Facebook. So we've grown along with everybody else.
What are those handles that get people to follow you today?
What, like WilliBrew.com, or it's WilliBrew, and also on Facebook.
And so how many craft breweries are in the state of Connecticut?
So I'm on the board of directors of the Connecticut Craft Brewers Guild. And for a while I was vice president, but we tried to do a guild way back in the late 90s, and there was a dozen of us. We were, I think, number 7 or 8. Now there's well over 125. And as I said, so many things have grown out of small ideas. And there's micro distilleries in the state now that are also, are alumni, and wineries and cideries and kombucheries, if that's even a term. It's just a wonderful time because the state has actually been very forthright in helping small businesses such as ours, get through the pandemic and continue to operate, and gave us some leeway when we were able to do outdoor seating, or we could only do to-go business. So, we've been very lucky to be in the state that's been pro-business. And I feel very lucky, to have picked Willimantic especially. We have great people here. It's a very diverse community. they've supported us through the good times and the not so good. Sometimes the flat beer and sometimes the cold food, but we're still here because we have a great community, and we're so lucky to be only 9 miles from UConn.
Got through COVID and you're going strong.
We are. Thank you.
So you talked a little bit about the Connecticut Beer Guild. About how many of those folks are UConn alums who are brewers or owners?
Well, I know, Mike Teed up at Black Pond, they just opened up a brand new location a couple of months ago. They've been around, I think, 7 years or 8 years now. Connor from Half Full, he's out there still, beating the streets down in Stratford or Stamford. Stewards of the Land, that Barry. Yep. Hop Culture, Heather.
Labyrinth.
Adam. Oh, Tots, yep. Dana from Firefly.
Yep, Firefly.
Still Hill.
Oh, that's right, Scott. Yeah.
So UConn alums are pretty well represented in the Connecticut.
And some of them
world.
actually, so Mike and Scott and Dana all have brewed beer here before they got their breweries open.
So with that, Josh, can you talk a little bit about how we've taken advantage of the number of Connecticut breweries that are owned by alums and what we do with that?
Sure. So as you all probably are aware at this point, we are here under the combined auspices of the Cooking Club and the 1881 series. Well, this started a number of years ago, as Jodi alluded to. I want to say 2017. Many of you have attended brewery tours throughout the years. If you're interested in beer, you probably have been on one or another. And it was actually this man right here, along with Mike Teed up at Black Pond, that we had a conversation with. And we talked about how do we spice this up? And in 2017, you might remember, was like the peak of that craft beer wave where everybody was waiting in line 2 hours for the next beer. And so David and I and Mike sat down and we said, how can we make this work to kind of benefit the UConn community as well? And we said, why aren't we in the middle of this? And so we threw around the idea of brewing a beer that had never been done before and releasing it to alums first. So essentially that was the birth of the 1881 series back in 2017. And I can tell you right now, before COVID, we had 3,000 individuals over a 2.5, 3 year period come through the 1881 turnstiles. And 75% of those people were brand new, never had engaged with us before.
And how did we pivot that program
Oh,
when we
geez.
couldn't have in-person events anymore during COVID?
Well, all of you love your beer, so we had to keep it going. And I had to indulge you by keeping that flowing as well. See what I did there, Jodi? Flowing?
I like that.
So essentially, we took this online. We partnered with our faculty and staff and experts throughout the country. So we've done things where we've had experts, Stewart of the Land and some other folks talk about cannabis and beer. We've talked about the Black is Beautiful initiative. We had the founder of Weathered Soul Brewing down in San Antonio join us. I think you actually joined water, water filtration and how that impacts your beer. David, I think you joined us for the science of the sour beer. We've actually got one coming up on supply chain and the challenges that have happened there. So we've done a lot with it, and our faculty have bought in as well. I think they like the free beer, though.
The interesting thing about this virtual portion of the 1881 series, What's on Tap, has allowed us to make it a lifelong learning situation and be able to bring people in from all over the country and all over the world. So even though we're back in person, we're still going to have a virtual presence with that kind of event. How about the other ways we've used it with food or coffee or wine? What is that all about?
Yeah,
Josh?
depending on your vice. We've done things. We have various offshoots. We've done everything from visiting alumni-owned vineyards to spirits, as David alluded to. So we've done things. Our 1881 Uncorked, which is featuring obviously our wine and our vineyard experts out there. We've done spirits. We've tapped into. See, I did it again.
Yeah.
Mixologists and experts that are out there.
And what do we call that?
We call that On the Rocks.
All right.
Many of you, I think I saw on the list, have joined us for one or two of those. That's actually what we were referencing earlier, where Jodi magically sliced off part of her finger, peeling an orange that day.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. And so that's where the What's on Tap came in. We built in that additional component that basically spun it into a lifelong learning piece. So.
And we've added in the coffee,
Yep.
The science of coffee, which
Yep.
I wanted it to be something about a coffee buzz, but Josh wouldn't let me call it that. And ice cream we did.
We did one all about the Dairy Bar and how they've had to kind of change and morph over the years too. So we did the evolution of the UConn Creamery. You mentioned it, the science of the coffee. And so there's ideas out there, folks. I mean, we're welcome to anything out there. So drop those in the chat, send Jodi or I an email. We're happy to take a peek at those and see what we can make happen.
And lastly, on the topic of 1881, I just want to give you a couple of dates for in-person events. We're having an event on September 27th at Still Hill Brewing. And then we're back at Willimantic Brewing Company on October 15th for 1881 events.
An Oktoberfest style 1881 for those interested.
Oktoberfest 18 style.
Actually, Chef Will's got an entire menu customized for us on that one.
There you go. And then our virtual, for those of you outside of Connecticut, what's on tap, supply and demand, how breweries are keeping the beer flowing, is going to be on November 7th. And more information on that is to come. But keep looking at our website. I know that Kayla is going to drop in some URLs into the chat to sign up for these events or to find out about more of the events. And now back to you, Chef Will.
All right. All right, so now we're back to the stout cake. So we have our dry ingredients here. Like I said, it can either be the box dry ingredients, so the ingredients from your favorite recipe. From there, you sift it, and then you'll add your wet ingredients. Your wet ingredients, meaning if it asks for eggs, if it asks for vanilla, if it asks for water or beer, obviously beer because it's stout cake.
Chef, what temperature should we have our oven set at this point?
The temperature of the oven
for the cake.
Oh, for the cake.
Oh, for the cake. That depends on the cake that you're making. If you're using the box cake, you're going to follow the directions that are on the box exactly. Whatever your favorite recipe is. For my recipe here, my cake is my oven is set at a 375 degrees, and it's preheated. And then the other thing with my bundt pans, something to just jump ahead a little bit. Your bundt pans, you got to want to make sure you spray them really well with your favorite spray. I use Pam. You want to make sure it's very heavily sprayed so it doesn't stick. I've had issues that sometimes, depending on the moisture of the day, if it's a real humid day, that happens here in Connecticut often, or if David's brewing upstairs and causing a lot of moisture in the building, I'll have to sprinkle a little bit of flour in here. It's not super humid tonight. The air's flowing pretty good in here. David isn't brewing at this moment, so it seems all right. So I don't think I have to add flour in there. But that's just a little step ahead of what we're going to do.
When you talked about sifting earlier, you were saying the sifting gets rid of all of the clumps and things.
Yep.
I have never thought about taking a brownie mix or a cake mix and sifting. I'm always smashing down all of those little
things. It just makes it so it's less stressful. I'm all about making cooking as easy and as mainstream.
It can be anything.
Yeah.
You can sift anything to get rid of it.
And a lot of times you just want to do that, especially if you buy flour or product in bulk and it sits in a container for a period of time. It could have gotten moist in your kitchen or something and caused a little bit of clumpage in there or something like that. Your kid or something could have got in there to make something and put their hand in there and had something else in their hand and it fell into your flour or something like that. You want to sift that and make sure that you don't have anything to surprise you in your cake when you go to eat it. Because most surprises like that are not too pleasant.
Except that King's cake.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mardi Gras, that might be a little different with that, but.
We have a question.
Question came in: flour after or before the spray, the Pam spray?
The flour puts in after.
After.
I'll show you a little cheat, like how I would do it. I sprayed it like I showed you. I take a pinch of flour, just kind of sprinkle it around. And when you do that, you're going to tap the pan. So that way it kind of spreads around. And you don't want to get clumps in there. So don't start with a bunch of flour, just enough just to give it a little bit of a coating in there. And you just kind of toss it around. Just like that.
My cakes always get stuck on that center.
Well, that way you'd want to turn it into that way you get it kind of sprinkle on there. If it's a little harder to get it on there, just kind of take your time, kind of work with it. Just remember, the nicer you treat your product, the happier you are when you make it, the better it tastes when it comes out. It all has to do with attitude.
You talked about that with memories.
Yes, definitely. That's when a lot of times when you cook food or you eat food, it sparks memories from your past. With me, my first cooking experiences in my life was with my grandmother and my aunt. I was 4 years old and they taught me how to make split pea soup. Still to this day, it's one of the best memories of my mind. Just what drew me into cooking the most was just the love and the feeling that I got from thinking about that. And that's why I love what I do every day. It's starting off with love. So.
That's awesome.
So we have our dry product here. I'm going to do a little magic of television real quick. And I'm going to ask her to pull out my batter mix.
Voila.
While you're doing that, Chef, the question came in, is it actually 2 cups of sugar used for the cake?
For this cake, for that recipe, yes, it is.
Okay. Again, if you're making your own, not if you're using Duncan Hines.
No, if you're using Duncan Hines, just follow that recipe or your at-home recipe of your favorite cookbook or your passed down from generations chocolate cake. It's just a little twist that you can put on any chocolate cake that's out there to just kind of make it your own.
Might be a little too much sugar if you add it to the Betty Crocker style cakes.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I mean,
Too much sugar? What?
So yeah, that was the Guinness opening. Sitting on the counter over here, it got a little warm, so it's a little frothy, which is okay. So I added everything in here to the moist ingredients except for the wet ingredients, except for my beer. So we'll add 1 cup of beer. That's
And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I don't have a measuring cup back here,
Cheers.
but these little black bowls that we have here in the restaurant, I know how much that fits in there. And I can easily measure off 1 cup of beer. And if a couple of extra drops get in there, it's not the end of the world.
Might just get too moist with beer.
Yeah.
Said no one ever.
Said no one
Said
ever.
no one over.
Same with too much sugar though, Josh.
So with this, I'm going to fold in the beer. And if you're making this in a paddle mixer, which is okay too, you do all your wet ingredients on medium speed. When you add your beer, do it on low speed.
So a paddle mixer is just any electric mixer.
Yeah, any like mixer you have at home, KitchenAid, anything like that, whatever brand it is that you have.
See, and the best part is licking the spoon. I don't think he's going to let me though.
Oh, I'll let you. You're an adult. You can make that decision.
Chef, we have a question that came in.
Yes, sir.
Does the batter need to go into the refrigerator before you put the beer in it?
It doesn't at all. I only put that in there just as a little shortcut for talking with you guys, just so you guys just didn't have to sit and watch me just add every egg and every little thing to my dish that I'm making here. Just trying to make it a little bit more entertaining and just not you watching me just add products to a bowl.
How are your kitchens smelling, people?
And don't forget to keep stirring your beef stew.
Got a lot of comments of memories do trigger the minute they step into a kitchen, smell things. I know it's worked for me. My grandparents always walked in that house, smelled something cooking every time you went over there. Chef Will and I were talking about some of our mutual bloodlines and where they might have come from. And you know, it's one of those things that just sparks memories every time.
Well, and feel free to share those memories in the chat or on social media with a hashtag for this event, which I don't know what hashtag means. Josh, can you help me here?
Yes.
All right, so I have my batter here. It's a good consistency. See how it sticks a little to the spoon, but not too much to the spatula.
So it doesn't have to be completely smooth.
No, not too much. What happens a lot of times is the chocolate will kind of clump up a little bit on the sugar. And then you get a little bit of chunks there, but that's why I sifted it to make sure that you don't have any flour spots in your, or anything like that inside of your finished cake. And when you cut into it, it looks like a perfect chocolate cake and not white specks or things to it. So with that, I bring over the bundt pan. Just kind of evenly put it around the pan. There's no specific way to do it except for try not to spill it up the sides too high because it makes it so your bundt cake doesn't look quite as nice.
Chef, the question came in, if you didn't put it in the fridge, does it come out a little watery?
What was that?
If it doesn't go in the fridge, does it actually come out a little bit more watery?
It'll come out a little bit more watery because this one actually sat for a little while, which might actually go against me for the finished product. That it might be a little bit too thick because honestly, I've never made one that had to sit in the fridge like that. This was a first for me. So we're all learning today.
See, another first.
And if this works, this is something that I'll do in the future and I can have my prep cooks at night make this ahead of time. And then my morning cooks come in and they put them in the pans and bake them. And you guys are helping me learn things today.
Takes a village.
Takes a village, that it does. I didn't want to leave too much on the spatula for her to lick off. So
I have a great job.
yes. So just make sure it's even around the pan.
We have a question.
Yep.
Chef, a question came in.
Yep.
Can you recommend a different pan if they don't have a bundt pan? A different pan?
Any pan.
Any pan.
Any pan, and just follow the recipe that goes for that pan. Like some cooking times differ depending on the size pans that you use. I mean, if you just have like a 9x9 pan, if it's glass, if it's
Round,
Pyrex, if it's whatever, just follow the directions that are for that. If not, if you don't have the directions for that size pan, pay attention while you're baking. Just if it says 20 minutes, then you might want to check it after 15, or if it says a half hour, just check it every 5-minute periods after about 15-20 minutes of baking.
So for your recipe, when they're not using a box,
yep.
If they were to use a square pan or a rectangle glass, what would be the timing?
I would say probably 22-minute cooking time. Check it and see if it's toothpick clean.
Okay.
You'll drop the toothpick in, take it out. If there's nothing sticking to it, that's when you're done.
Okay.
So I'm going to take my cake here and I'm going to pop it in the oven over here real quick. I just have to run behind you. I'm sorry. I'm going to give the beef stew a quick stir again. And I'm also going to bring it over and show it to you guys so you can see where mine is, so you can compare where yours is.
Yeah, while you're doing that, a question came in about what do you recommend to garnish? Bailey's?
For the cake?
Yes.
Or the beef stew, Bailey's?
I'm not sure the dairy would be very well appreciated in there.
So you could use Bailey's. A lot of times here, like when I would do beer dinners with my desserts, I would do a stout reduction. I would take a beer, I'd put it into a saute pan and let it reduce about half. And I'd add a little bit of sugar to that. Brown sugar is usually what I would add to it. So that way it's not too bitter, kind of have it sweet there. And I'd sprinkle that over the top, and then I do a little sprinkle of cayenne pepper because chocolate and pepper go well. And a little dab of like just fresh whipped cream that you just whip up at home, or even just Cool Whip. You can just get a dollop of Cool Whip and pop it on there.
So when you were talking about the beer glaze that you would make, is that when we could maybe get a funky stout with a maple taste? Or
yeah, but the only problem with doing that is when you reduce it, sometimes it does alter that taste a little bit, and it would become a little too extreme, maybe in a different direction you're not going for it. But that's the thing to test. If you want to try it, and the worst thing that happens is you lost a half a can of beer, but you get to finish the other half and it's fine. So all right, so we have our cake working, we have our stew going. I'm going to show you guys how to do some clams pretty soon, but we're not going to jump in that right away because I want to make sure you guys kind of catch up a little bit.
Is it time for another commercial break?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. So we talked about the 1881 as the first half of the crossover for tonight. We haven't talked much about the Cooking Club. The Cooking Club is a great new program that we've had for, I think, 4 months now. And for those of you who are signed up for the Cooking Club, you've seen that each month there's a different theme. And this month is cooking with beer. We had a canning month and we had an Italian month. This is the time for you to put in the chat what months you would want to see. And if there are other types of cooking demonstrations you would want to see. Now, if you're from the 1881 side, you're not a member of the Cooking Club yet, this is your time to register for the Cooking Club. It's a free virtual program that we offer. And I think Kayla will be dropping that link in the chat right now. But that is, we're kind of a pilot program for this Cooking Club. We're working with PBC Guru, which is also our book club company. And so far, we've had a lot of fun with making this Cooking Club go live. Is there a question?
We've already got a recommendation. Holiday appetizers.
Holiday appetizers. That sounds...
I want Chef to teach me how to make his famous big as your head nachos.
We do
Our
love the
nachos?
big as your head nachos. Those are our
Yes.
favorites.
I could do that. Whatever you ask, I'll do what I can.
But the cooking club has been a really nice addition to what we offer. You know, the silver lining of COVID is that we learned that there's a lot of people who want to take advantage of virtual events that will probably never come to an in-person event. So we're going to keep certain virtual things going, like the cooking club, like the book club, like 1881 What's on Tap, because it allows us to expand our reach and to continue to engage you all in the way that you want to be engaged. Josh, is there a question?
No, another recommendation, comfort food.
Comfort food like beef stew.
Well, I heard Chef talking earlier that he makes a mean mac and cheese.
You know, I heard that too. And I think we need to sample it before we go about, you know, offering this to the
But
crowd.
Chef, I asked for buffalo mac and cheese. Is that an option?
Anything's an
All right. I heard lobster mac and cheese is another good one out
Gotta
there, right?
remember where there's a will, there's a way, and I'm Chef Will.
You are Chef Will. So there's a lot of ways. Jodi, another one came in because, you know, keeping with the 1881 theme, liquor infused apps. We talked about that earlier, cooking with different spirits. This one specifically, liquor infused recipes. So,
well, and that was something when we talked to Chef Will last week or whenever we were here looking around, we talked about the possibility of cooking with wine, cooking with spirits, and where we can take that in the future. So these are all great, and we're going to keep track of all of these ideas for possibilities.
healthy and delicious main entrees and recipes. And a whole night of mac and cheese, somebody said would be fantastic. So
I could do that.
A whole night of mac and cheese. Wow.
I'm not-
I'm full thinking.
I'm
We
yeah.
could do a gluten-free mac and cheese.
There you go.
A regular mac and cheese.
There you go.
A meat lover's mac and cheese. A veggie lover's mac and cheese.
So speaking of
That's
that,
a lot of
you
carbs.
and I talked a little bit ago about how dietary restrictions play into what you do.
Yep.
And tell us about how dietary restrictions work at WilliBrew.
Well, I take diet restrictions very seriously because myself, I'm allergic to shellfish and I'm allergic to pork products, which I work with every day.
Am I going to have to save a life tonight when we
No,
do
not
the
at all.
shellfish?
I learned the hard way when I was younger working in kitchens that what I was allergic to, basically. Woke up in the emergency room a couple times. But I've learned to work with that. I taste everything that I make, but just the taste a lot of times because I'll swell up, go into anaphylactic, and it won't be good for anybody. I grew up working in seafood restaurants the majority of my youth and my training, and I just thought every day I went to work and I was supposed to be itchy and uncomfortable, and it was just part of what my job was. And I just worked through it, and I enjoy what I did so much that I never even really thought about it. And it was just part of like working in the sun outside, you getting a sunburn. It's like I work in a kitchen with seafood, I get a little itchy, I get hives up my arm here and there. It definitely triggered me to always use gloves, wash my hands constantly, and pay attention to where products are, so that way I don't cross-contaminate. And with my cooks here, we take that very seriously. Because I always tell them when they start working for me, you don't want to kill your boss.
That's a rule we live by in alumni relations too.
Yeah. Which is a good way for them to really remember that it's super important. We have separate fryolators to cook shellfish in and seafood in. We have a specific fryolator that's just for vegetarians. There's never any meat or anything in that fryolator there. Every morning, because he brought up the nachos, we make, I'd say we fry up about 80 pounds, 60 to 80 pounds of corn chips a morning. And those I have to make sure all the fryolators are clean every night. New oil's put in, and it's fresh oil that we make it in every single morning. So that way there's no ability to cross-contaminate or get anyone sick. And I can guarantee that foods that people get here, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure it's as safe and pleasurable as possible.
Got a comment from the crowd here. Sounds like you're a great boss because no one is forgotten.
What's that?
Sounds like you're a great boss here because it sounds like nobody's forgotten what they need to do.
No one's forgotten what they need to do. I appreciate them for that, and I appreciate you noticing that. But yeah, and then when it comes to like gluten allergies, that's really big right now. It's a little difficult for us being a brewery. David's constantly brewing beer. We make bread here and use flour in the kitchen constantly. So there's gluten particles in the air constantly. So we can never guarantee that it's gluten-free, but we do our best to make sure that we make it as safe as possible and do our best to make sure we're not making bread right next to something that we're making that's gluten sensitive or anything like that. So we do offer a lot of gluten sensitive products on our menu for people with dietary issues with that. Oh, yeah, does that answer for you?
Yes, that definitely answers things. So people with dietary restrictions could feel pretty comfortable dining at Willimantic Brewing Company as long as they tell their server what their issues are.
Exactly. Always let them know exactly what you're allergic to. It's something that we take extremely serious here.
Josh.
Question, Chef Will, about the clams.
Yep.
Some of them have opened. Is that okay?
That's okay. Some of them will open is when you bring them up and smell them, make sure that they don't have a bad aroma to them. They'll have like an ocean aroma, seafood aroma. If it starts to smell not pleasant, obviously discard those. A lot of times when they come out and they might be opening a little bit, if you tap on them a little bit, they'll close eventually. A lot of times when they're in the refrigerator, they'll relax and they'll open some too. So when you bring them out to on the counter to work with, they'll tighten up a little bit more. But also while you're cooking, I'll show you guys while I'm cooking the clams. Sometimes you'll grab a handful and you'll drop them in there. And when you start to cook, you realize one might be going. You pick that one out right away and throw it in the garbage can. So that way you see it when it's right in the pan, and you'll see all the other ones are popping open and this one's being stubborn or just doesn't look right. Just throw it away if you have a question in it. Never test the waters and just taste it if it's bad. Just it's better to err on getting rid of it and making sure it's just as fresh as possible when it comes to using fresh seafood.
All right, so let's get back to the whole idea of cooking with beer, the theme of tonight.
Yep.
So I've had recipes that I've used that said, put in a can of beer.
Yep.
And it doesn't specify the type of beer. How do you know the type of beer to put in? Like I'm thinking of a corned beef and cabbage recipe that I have that I just pick a lager, but I don't know that that's right. I don't know if it should be a stout, a porter, a sour.
What it has to do with mostly is your taste. What do you enjoy? Because we all have different tastes. We all enjoy different flavors of different things. There are just the streamline that's like, oh, if you're cooking a corned beef dinner, you want to use like a Guinness or a stout or something like that, or just you don't have to do that. It's basically just looking for the flavor that you're looking for. If you enjoy a beer and you really want to taste it with something to see how it goes, try it. Don't be afraid. Try it.
But what's the safe choice?
The safe choice is you want to pay attention to the sugars. Obviously, a darker beer, for me, they tend to have more of a sugar content. So you want to watch with things with that. You wouldn't want to. I really wouldn't want to make a fish and chip with a stout. I mean, people do, but it's not mine. I like mine a little bit more zesty when I do my beer batter. I'll put in a light colored beer, sometimes maybe even a red I'll add in there, but I'll add Cajun seasoning to it, flour. I'll whip that up and make my beer batter that way. I add the Cajun to it, so I like to aim more to the lighter beers. That way you get the flavor. It doesn't overpower with the beer. You never want your beer to overpower. You never want your spices to overpower. You want them all to just kind of marry together and work together evenly.
Okay.
So practice makes perfect. And that's why you just keep cooking and you'll just get better and better and better at it. I promise you.
All right, let's talk chef jacket for a minute.
Okay.
Why does it button so weirdly? Is there a reason for that?
Well, there is a reason for that. It's so when you spoil the front of this, you can open them up. I don't want to ruin my microphone here, but
fold over.
It has another layer on the inside that you can just flip it and button it up on this side. So that way, if you have a little spillage, which unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to have a perfect spill go down the center of me here to do that perfectly, but someone had to have. But you have that opportunity to flip that over. A lot of chef coats, I have a few of them at home. They start up here, they're the French cut. Those are more my style because it covers the whole front of you. And I tend to make a mess all over me if I'm going to make a mess.
So you're wearing long sleeves in a hot kitchen.
Yep.
Is that so you don't get burned by splattering?
It's so you don't get burned. Also, the sleeves are always longer. So if you don't have a pot holder on hand, you can pull your sleeves down and use that if you had to.
Okay.
They're not longer for you to wipe your nose with. You never wipe your nose with your chef coat or anything like that. You don't cough into your chef coat. You do that on the ground or in a towel and you wash your hands immediately and get rid of the towel. The chef coat, it keeps the heat off me. It also keeps me the same temperature when I go into a freezer. I go into a walk-in. As I walk through the kitchen, I'll stay at the same temperature. A lot of times, if you have a short sleeve on and you're really hot in the kitchen and you go in the freezer, and you're like, oh, it's cold, and you come out, it's even hotter in the kitchen, it feels like. You want to keep your temperature the same temperature most of the day. And also when you sweat, you'll get that layer of sweat between you. It'll cool your body. So,
Okay.
and it's just for safety and just for comfort too. And it's each chef to their own. Some chefs like short sleeve. It just depends on who you are. It depends on what you're doing. But I like the long sleeves.
All right, so about right now, your cakes should be in the oven smelling deliciously. Your beef stew should be having a nice aroma across your kitchen. How y'all doing so far? You want to show them yours to see?
Yeah, I'll bring mine over right
Take a
now.
look at the at Chef Stew at this point.
Yep.
See what that's doing.
And I also recommend if you're bringing a pot over to a cutting board, put a towel down. Don't burn your cutting board. That's one of my biggest pet peeves here is when my cooks get lazy and they'll bring a pot over and set it right on a cutting board and you get a burn print in there and then you got to buy a new cutting board. You can see it's still not quite the thickness that I want it to be, but it's getting to where it needs to go. Everything, all the smells and everything are all coming together. The herbs, the spices, the meat, the beef stock, the beer, the vegetables. I'm just going to add a little bit more rosemary at this point. And I'm also going to add a little bit of fresh parsley. Let's give it a little bit of color. I call this love here at the restaurant. I always ask my guys, did you put love in it? That means, did you add some parsley to it? Just taking that extra step to do the little more.
Does the diameter of the pot that you're using matter?
If it's a wider pot, it'll cook quicker because you can spread out the liquid more. If it's a taller, skinnier pot, it'll take longer to cook. It's also more likely to burn on the bottom. If you spread out your area, you have more control. You have more ability to make it the way that you want it to do. And also, I was able to talk and just do things, and I'm not worried about turning around every couple of minutes to make sure it's not burning behind you. But if you only have a tall pot, that's fine. And you can also, you could cut this recipe in half and do half this amount if you wanted to, if there's only like 2 or 3 people eating. This right here, look at me, I don't miss too many meals, but I like to cook something, have it, and when it comes to something like this, there's nothing better than leftovers when it comes to the comfort foods, you know?
So how are people's stews looking? Are they thickening up? Are you feeling good?
Says it smells amazing, and somebody's actually using Yingling for theirs for their cake.
Are you using what?
Yingling's Hershey's Porter for their cake.
That's perfect. That'll work just fine.
Hershey's has beer?
Yeah. Well, it's tied to Yingling, the oldest brewery in America.
Oh, okay. Oh, Pennsylvania thing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So with back to my beef stew real quick. I'm going to add the squash now.
Oh, okay. I forgot about the
Yes,
squash.
I nearly did. I have my mashed squash here. I just put a little bit of salt and pepper in it. And a little bit of cinnamon. That's all I did in this, and this mashed it. I'm going to take about a cup and a half worth and just add it to my beef stew.
So what if you're not a big squash fan? Can you?
You don't have to add squash to it.
Could you add something else in its place?
You could add anything you want. You can add any type of root veg, any type of vegetable. If you want to add green beans to it, you can add green beans to it. It's pretty much sky the limit. Sometimes I add peas to my beef stew. When I do it for St. Patrick's Day, I add peas to it, so it gives a little green in there. But it's pretty much, it's up to the chef. It's up to your discretion of what you like to do. So right now, I'm just stirring in the squash just so it's evenly stirred through there.
So you're going to break that apart, that loaf.
Exactly. And you can see just adding that.
It's thickening it.
It's thickening it. I'll bring it over here so you guys can see it at home.
Yeah, that was interesting how quickly that.
And you can see there's still little chunks of squash in there, but as it cooks, it's just going to break down. And that's going to give it that palatability, that creamy goodness, like eating a candy bar that makes you feel really, really good. trigger those happy endorphins in your head.
It looks and smells great, Chef Will.
Thank you.
So are you all finding it easy to do this recipe? Has it been challenging? What's been the most challenging part so far?
All right.
All right.
So now we're going to start with the clams. On the recipe, if you guys notice, it says 3 slices of hearty bread. That's basically any bread that you want, anything that you want to do. It's your prerogative. It's just basically to soak up the juice of the dish I'm making here. We make our own brewer's bread here at the restaurant. This is a loaf of it. It's made with a spent grain. I'll rip it open so you guys can kind of look inside. And you look inside, you can see, I hope, little grains from the spent grain from the beer.
I may have to have a closer look at that or taste of that.
Yeah. This is the best part on the inside.
I'm seeing the grains and I'm going to enjoy the grains.
Yes, but this is the type of bread that I use here at WilliBrew for our crostinis.
Hold it up.
Oh.
Pull it right there.
All right.
That is delicious.
Thank you.
Now, was that baked fresh today?
We can all thank David too, because it's spent grain. This was baked fresh about an hour and a half ago. I let it sit out and get the room temperature. I take it and I'll cut it on a bias like this. Just looks nice on the plate when they're this shape. And you can put it on I have an open flame grill here. At home, if you have a toaster oven or something like that, you could pop it right in the toaster oven just to crisp it up. But basically, you don't want to, I like a crispier piece of bread to soak up my juices with. So that's why I grill them. And with that, I'll pop these on the grill.
So your serrated knife that you use to cut the bread.
Yep.
How do you sharpen a serrated knife?
I get a new one.
Oh, okay.
I'm being honest with you. It's better for me to just get a new one. We're lucky here we have a knife company. The ones that I have at home, I don't go through them that often that I would have to sharpen them.
Okay.
If you get impurities in here, you take your steel, kind of run it up through where the teeth are, and just nicely run it through. It'll get rid of any impurities or any shavings of metal you might have in there. Then wipe it off, clean the knife, make sure you don't have any metal shavings. But usually a serrated knife will hold his edge for quite some time.
And for a home cook, how important are good knives?
Very important. It keeps your fingers on your hands. If you don't have a sharp knife, you end up losing digits. One of my first line cook cooking jobs is I went as a morning cook. I was there by myself at a Sheraton hotel, and I was starting breakfast, and it was my first day on the job, and I had to cut up onions, and I didn't have my own knives with me, and I used the knives they had there, and I picked up a knife and started cutting. It was a great big colossal onion, and I went to cut it and took off my pinky. And that was a good learning point for me to make sure you always have sharp knives. Always make sure that you're paying attention to your surroundings and don't be half asleep when you're working with a knife. So that's why I work second and third shift, because morning shift is not for me.
Questions?
So we have a couple questions that have come through here.
Yep.
The first, and sorry, the chat is filling up real quick. So hold on one second. Let me get back here. Is there a difference in the cooking of the stew between using a Teflon coated pan and a stainless?
I wouldn't use a Teflon coated pan just because you're constantly stirring. I know if you use a wooden spoon, it'd be okay. But I wouldn't highly recommend that as much.
Okay.
All right.
On to the
All right,
clams.
so now we're going to go to the clams. So with the clams, I have my saute pans. I'm going to pop those on the stove. We're going to get those really hot.
So high on both?
Yep, you're going to put them on high. You're going to grab me my clams out of there. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You're also going to pass me over those lemons. Thank you. And you guys had asked about clams opening. I just want to show you, I have a few of mine that they've started to open a little bit. This one right here, is a good example. You see how the tongue is sticking out of it? Its neck there? If they're looking like that, throw it away. That's too questionable. I wouldn't use that. This one here again, same thing. You see how I'm pitching it to see if it'll catch? He's not catching. He's definitely not sleeping. He's dead. So with that, if you excuse me 1 minute, I'm just going to go wash my hands because I just grabbed those with bare hands. And I don't want to weight my forehead and get a reaction. So 1 moment.
Here we go, saving lives. While Chef Will is away, I just want to alert you guys to some upcoming events. September is our Welcome to the Neighborhood month. That's the month where we have events in 23 regions across the country. I looked where all of you are from, and we have events still for the rest of this month in Connecticut, Florida, California, Ohio, North Carolina, and did I miss one? Massachusetts. So if you're interested, if Kayla could drop the UConn Alumni website in there, you can go to Welcome to the Neighborhood and sign up for those events. Here's Will.
All right, I'm back, guys. Glove on hand, ready to go. So I'm going to add a little bit of oil to my pans. You
Now,
can see
is that okay that it tips like that on your?
You can see my pan here smoking a little bit. That means your pan's too hot. So give it a second, let it cool off just slightly. That's that smoking point that I told you about. And if you don't do that, I add oil to it, it's going to ignite, but it's at a smoking point. All right, so I've added my oil. I'm going to add my vegetables.
And this is again the same.
That's carrot, celery, onion, fine diced. You want them to be fine diced because this dish is going to cook really quickly. You don't want to be large because they'll be really tough when you go to eat them. You're going to kind of toss these around a little bit. If you want to use a spoon, that's okay. Don't think that you have to toss around with your hand like that. Just I've had a little bit more practice, so that's how I saute a little bit more. With that, I'm going to add a pinch of salt and pepper. A pinch of salt and pepper for you guys to see at home. I'd say about that much. So with that, you're going to let your vegetables splut a little bit like we talked about earlier. You're going to wait for your onions to become a little translucent. I have an open flame here, so that's why that will ignite a little bit more. If you have an electric stove at home, it shouldn't do that. So with that, I have my clams here. And I usually do about 8 clams per order. You could do more, you could do less, just depending on how many people you'd like to feed. And this recipe also, you can incorporate it with mussels. You can incorporate it with pretty much any shellfish that's out there like this. So you see the clams are getting a little hot steam bath right now. They're sizzling up pretty well. We're going to add our garlic to it now.
Are you hearing the sizzle out there?
And you're going to see your vegetables are going to start getting a little dark. Some of them might get a little black almost. Don't worry about that. That's fine. You just don't let it burn to the bottom. Might want to turn your heat a little bit down to medium maybe just for a moment. And you can also see in there, the onions are starting to become a little bit more translucent. Hopefully you guys can see that at home.
The smell is just delicious.
So with that, you're going to get your beer. I have an amber beer I'm using now. I like to use amber beer with seafood quite a bit. I think that it gives it the right amount of sweetness with the sweetness of the seafood and just that little snap bite you look for. You're going to let the clams swim for a minute in that. The beer itself isn't what's lighting on fire. It's the oil that I had in the pan.
And Chef Will's rule, not
Yes, gotta keep drinking. So with this, I'm gonna turn it back up to high heat. And with the high heat here, if you have a cover for your pan at home, put a cover over it. What we use here at the restaurant, because we don't have covers everywhere with all our pans, we'll use another saute pan. And I'll just place it right over the top.
so it doesn't have to be tight on.
Yep, just let it balance on there. And then we're just gonna let the beer do its magic. And you're gonna wanna make sure you have some butter on hand and a couple of lemon wedges when that comes off. So I'm gonna stir around my stew again and make sure that that's not sticking.
Getting a little thicker, people, getting a little thicker.
That's the consistency I have right now with my soup. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's got legs, it's sticking to the side of the dish, so that's nice.
It's definitely thickening up nicely.
Yep. So we're
Good
gonna go
progress in Chef Will's kitchen going on. Great progress.
We're gonna get back to our clams here. They haven't popped yet, but what I want to do right now is I'm gonna take a nice wedge of lemon here. I'm just gonna squeeze it over the top. I like to put my hand over it though to make sure the seeds don't fall in there, because someone doesn't want to eat a lemon seed. Or you could just have a cheesecloth and wrap it around it and squeeze it to the cheesecloth. Luckily,
So you
no
go
seeds.
into your hands.
And that's why you always have to have clean hands too. So I squeezed a wedge of lemon into each one. Move it around a little bit
See,
more.
we're able to see what's going on in these.
You can see
It's
where we are
looking
now.
good.
You can see they're all starting to pop a little bit there. That means that they're almost cooked.
So are they fully open when they're
Yep,
ready?
you can
So
see
like
that one just opened right there. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to take my pat of butter. We're going to add it to your liquid. This also makes it a little bit more palatable, a little bit more tasty to eat. Thickens it up a little bit. They would call this the final liaison, the final link thickening product.
About how much butter, Chef?
About a tablespoon.
So
You can do less. You could do more if you want to make it more of a butter sauce and put it over a linguine or something like that. You could turn it into a clam dish like that as well.
So you said that you got one guy that's fully open and a lot
Yep.
of them are still fairly closed. Do you pull off the ones that are open? Because, or do they have-
If the other ones seem not to be opening up like they should be, you might want to do that. But they'll pretty much, they'll all be opened up within like the next minute or two.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to pop the top back on just to give it a little bit more steam in there to get them all finished popping up the rest of the way.
How are people's clams looking? Are you feeling good about your clams? Anyone sending pictures? Or they have to do social media?
That's using the hashtag that we talked about.
Can you talk about that? Because I can't.
If you're participating, this is where Jodi mentioned that she's not tech savvy. So if you're participating and want to show us some as you're moving along, just make sure you tag us by using the hashtag UConn Alumni. And what was there? One more of them there you had in there?
We were going to do 1881 hashtag.
1881 series is the other one you can use, and you can get that on there. And we've actually got our social media guru, Katie Henchy, here with us. So she's taking some shots along the way, and she'll be happy to see those as you kind of post them along. So
I think Katie likes alumni work now, don't you, Josh?
I think so. I think we might keep her for a little while.
We do that with people. We get them to like our jobs.
What is there not to like? You get to go drink beer and learn how to do new things.
Hey, it's a living, all right? It's a
Yeah,
living.
it is. All right, so here are our clams. You see they're all popped open. If one's being a little stubborn, just stick a spoon or something in there, just cup it on the rest of the way. What I like to do is just place them around my bowl. Pour your nice broth right over the top here. Plenty of vegetables in there. It's a meal in itself.
Smells outstanding.
So with that, take our pieces of grilled bread. We'll set those right up on there. We'll give it a nice little pinch of love, some parsley. There's our steamed clams.
So would that be an appetizer?
It could be an appetizer. It could be a full meal. There's quite a bit there.
Yeah.
It's kind of what you'd like it to be. And now comes the fun part for you.
Oh, yeah.
The fun part for you is you're going to get to dig in.
You know, I got to take one for the team since this would kill you.
Exactly. And here's a little spoon for the broth. You have your fork there to dig right in there.
All right. So
Let's see if you can do this without spilling on yourself, Jodi.
that's going to be the trick.
At least you won't cut herself.
This is true. Well,
I mean,
there are knives around.
This could be sharp.
And there's hot surfaces.
So is this how I do it?
Yep.
Okay. Here goes nothing, people. Delicious. Josh, only the talent gets this.
That's fine. That's fine. Go for it. We're getting comments in here that it looks amazing. Does it smell just as good?
It's so good. The garlic is amazing. I love a lot of garlic. Maybe I'll help myself to another one, Chef Will.
They're all for you. I made a bowl for them to eat on the other side.
Mm.
You got to remember, feeding people is what I do. So I always make sure I make enough.
All right, you talk about good memories around food.
Yes.
Here's one.
Like a day at the beach. It's like going to the
Here's
Cape.
This is awesome. This is delicious.
Excellent. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And the bread there kind of gives it that little extra something.
I'm gonna do a little dipping of the bread in the sauce. Mm. So good. Wait till you guys try it.
All right. So I think our cake should be about set. I think we're going to go check on that right now.
Okay.
We're going to clean this up here. Just put this to the side.
Don't put it too far away.
Oh, I won't.
So while Chef is doing a little cleanup, let me tell you about a couple of other upcoming events that are virtual events. So wherever you are, you'll be able to take advantage. The first one is our Elevate session called Career Hacks, which is all about professional development. So when it says Career Hacks after Elevate, that's virtual. When it's just straight up Elevate, those are generally in person. Our Elevate Career Hacks event is called the Everyday Approach to Unconscious Bias, and that'll be on September 21st. Another event that I want to point out that's virtual is part of our This is America series, and that is called the Disenfranchised Voter, and that will be on September 28th. Again, you can go right to our website, find out more information about this, and also find out how to register. The beauty of all these virtual events is we record them. So we have a nice library of recorded events that you can find also on our website. So enjoy. Is there a question coming?
Chef, this is a question for you. When you're using amber beer, any preferences, anything to recommend?
Whatever David made.
That's always a good one. Yeah, WilliBrew special.
There's something about David's beer that I don't know if it's in my head and it's placebo, but his beers tend to be my favorite out there.
Good
So
answer for your boss.
I'm not the person
that's love if I've ever seen it. That's love.
With beer like that, it's just
all right,
I
David.
have the joy of the freshest beer out there. Literally, he brews it and he doesn't even take it out of the thing up there brewing, and he's like, "Here, try some," and I'm like, "It's amazing. Taste I've never had in my life."
Really, any amber style that isn't too aggressive, what you're looking for is the fact that most ambers have crystal or caramel malts. So that gives it a little bit of that burnt sweetness. If it's very heavy in alcohol, you might have to cook off a little bit longer to get some of that alcohol out. But really, I mean, you know, again, you got local breweries all over the country now. So I would say stop in your local and try some and see what you like. You can go with a blonde ale if you're not into the caramelly flavors. I mean, you know, really, there's so much out there now. It's a great time to be a beer drinker or cooking with the beer.
All right, back to our cake.
All right, so we're back to the cake. You want to make sure your cake's done the old-fashioned way. Toothpick, dip it in, take it out. Zoom in on there. You see there's just a teeny tiny bit, but that's okay. It's going to be a little moist because you're cooking it with beer also. But it should be dry like that. Let me take our cake.
Look how easy that came out.
Right on the pan.
Does that come out as easy for all of you? Come on now.
I did that twice, actually. I put it back on.
I literally had a moment. I just was like, "Did you see my jaw drop on that?" I'm like, "How did he do that?" I'm usually there with a knife trying to cut out.
Slam
Well,
it
it did
down.
come out well, but not that quickly and that well. But this is what your finished product should look like.
Can you see that? That looks delicious.
We're going to cut a piece out of it here. We're going to make sure that there's no impurities through it of white spots or flour chunks.
I'll still eat it. It's okay.
I hope so. There's a lot of cake here.
That's a good looking cake.
There you go. It's a nice moist cake. You get a good view of that. You can see here. You can see a little bit of the cake. When I took it out, it was pretty moist. It stuck to the plate a little bit. That's okay. Not a big deal. I'm going to grab my lovely assistant here, a spoon. She's going to try a bite of this cake.
All right.
With you guys at home, you're not going to eat the cake that fast, that you're just going to take it out of the oven and eat. That was a little bit of trickery with television. It needs to kind of come to room temperature before you do that.
Looks great.
And you also don't want to take it out of the pan immediately. You want to let it cool. So I got the nod. Yes, it must be good. I think she enjoyed it.
I'm going to go for another one. I'm a happy camper back here.
And don't worry, we got a little more than 3/4 of the cake left for you to eat over there. And you talked about Bailey's earlier. Now, a shot of Bailey's on the side with this would be nice.
But it doesn't even need
No,
a
because
glaze.
it's so moist. Exactly.
It's so good.
And that's what here at the restaurant, we just put whipped cream on it. And maybe some people, they want the little extra chocolate. So we'll do like a chocolate syrup glaze or something like that. But I mean, honestly, it's delicious like that. And it's so moist because of the stout. If you make a regular chocolate cake and then you make a stout cake, the exact same recipe, but just use the stout, it'll blow it out of the water. People won't think it came out of a box, I promise you. All right, so just let me wipe up here a little bit. We're gonna get over to the beef stew because that's about ready.
I think Jody's wiping up in a different way.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm just cleaning up this plate.
Just clean up that plate for me. One less dish to wash.
Work, work, work.
Someone's got to do it.
For those of you at home, sorry, this is all we can show you right now.
All right.
And for those of you that know me, you understand.
This is the magic of cinema, right?
All right, you can put it somewhere else.
No, you can keep that. I won't take that away from you. I know people will fight over chocolate, so.
Oh, that's bubbling up a storm. Did you put that now on high?
Yeah, I just, to speed it up a little bit, I just turned it up slightly more, just to get a better consistency of it that I'm looking for.
How many of you in the audience are going to be able to wait until tomorrow to eat your beef stew, and how many are going to eat it right now?
Which is perfectly fine. The way you want to tell if it's done is you want to take a bite of a carrot. Might be a little hot, so you want to blow it and cool it off before you take a bite of it. And your potato, make sure that those aren't too al dente for you. And that means al dente means to the bite, the texture. So you just don't want it to be too hard.
Josh, are people eating tonight, or are they holding off?
Somebody's barely making it till it's done. They're already in it. So
that's okay.
yeah.
I do the same.
I understand.
Being the chef, I walk behind my cooks all day over their shoulder tasting things, and it's the joy of cooking.
That's the perfection in it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, most people are here. They're not waiting till tomorrow. They're gonna eat part. I'm sure some will wait till tomorrow. And the question was the squash you put in, was that butternut that you did?
It was butternut squash.
Okay, a mash.
You can use acorn squash. You can use Hubbard squash. You can use any type of squash that you want, like that. Pumpkin even. At Halloween, I'll make it a lot of times, and there'll be an abundance of pumpkins that people just have, and I'll use that and incorporate that in there.
Yeah, a question came in about the stew pan. Do you always leave it uncovered?
Do I always leave it uncovered? Unless I get in a hurry, then I'll cover it up. But if not, I like to smell and watch everything I make. It's I don't know. When I was younger, you didn't have as many channels on television. You didn't have computers to watch things all the time and stuff. And this was your entertainment a lot of times at grandma's house, that you watch the stuff cook on the stove. So it just, again, it brings back happy memories. So I'm going to plate up one for her to try.
Don't forget me.
Oh, I got you.
And your name is? Wow. I think this.
A lot of times here, I garnish with a dollop of sour cream. You don't have to. I'm just going to do it for viewing pleasure. Right in the center there. Little pinch of parsley. You're very welcome. A little sprig of rosemary, just a little bit of eye appeal. Doesn't really do anything, but just makes the plate look better. So when you eat it, it tastes better.
And does the person eat the sprig?
It wouldn't kill you. Some people will, some people
not
won't.
like clams.
Yeah. But there you go. There's our finished product.
That looks beautiful. Beautiful.
Now, oh, only little spoons. Oh, no. Gonna say you're gonna have to take little bites, but I found a big spoon.
All right.
Might be a little warm.
Got to get a piece of meat in there.
So I got a thumbs up. It must be good. And a clap.
So good, so tender.
And again, with the brewer's bread that I talked to you guys about earlier, the hearty breads that you have, bread always goes well with beef stew. So anytime people come to WilliBrew, our beef stew always comes with a little slice, a couple slices of bread on there.
Delicious.
Thank you very, very much. And this was pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to doing a few more cooking demonstrations if you guys like. I know I talked about the brewer's bread a lot. I mentioned to you earlier, maybe we could do a segment that you could follow us around in the morning and look at the process of what we do to make the bread. It has to proof for about 4 hours, so we'll slice it up and stuff. And people
so there would be a lot of playful discussion throughout for 4 hours.
But
my suggestion is we do it on the day we brew the 1881 beer, and then we can multitask.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
That could be a good thing.
So I hope everybody has enjoyed tonight. Are there last minute questions for Chef Will before we sign out? Because I've got some food to eat here. So what kind of questions do you have?
Don't be shy, everybody. Just jump on in there. Questions are, what's coming next?
What's coming next?
I don't know, Kayla, we're going to throw that one your way at some point because we'll figure that out as we work with our partners over at PBC Guru. But planning on a bike ride down the rail trails, bird into Willimantic. Jodi, you're a biker. You might want to join this person.
That's what I did through COVID, and I frequented the outside of Willimantic Brewing at my halfway point. So I enjoyed riding the rail trails and ending up having nachos and beer before riding home. So Willimantic Brewing is in the perfect spot for the rail trail.
Chef, question for you.
Yeah.
Question for the heat temperature of the oven for the cake.
For the cake, it was 375 I had it at.
375. All right, perfect. Any other questions out there?
If there are, is there another question?
Somebody's putting in, how long was the cake in there? About a half an hour?
Yeah, 35 minutes.
35. There you go, Tim. And you'll notice that Kayla's dropped in there, the upcoming 1881 events. Make sure you sign up for those. Still Hill is our Welcome to the Neighborhood in 1881 series crossover down in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. We have WilliBrew. We're going to be back here, as we mentioned, for our Oktoberfest themed 1881 series on the 15th of October. Black Pond, another fantastic alumni-owned brewery out in Dayville, Killingly, Connecticut on 12/3. And coming soon, you'll get more information about the supply chain virtual webinar you can participate in. But Jodi, I'm not sure if there's anything else out there. We'll take a quick look here. But people are actually asking, and Valerie, it's great to see you on here again. Again, reminders of dates for our Welcome to the Neighborhood series. There's a couple of people that are going to be attending other ones. One person's going to be in Tampa. I know, Michael out in Arizona. Sorry, we don't have something this year for you, but there's a few others. Can you go through those dates again?
Yes, I can. Hold on, let me get the proper information.
It's covered by cake, so.
All right, Hartford is September 27th at Still Hill. Fairfield County is at Sign of the Whale on September 15th. New Haven is at Barcade on September 22nd. South Florida is on September 29th. It's a happy hour. Orlando and Tampa both have football game watches this Saturday for the Michigan game on the 17th.
Jodi, while you're on the Michigan game, for those that might be heading out to Ann Arbor, alumni and athletics are doing a partnered event as well. So if you have interest in that, it is a free event to attend the pregame. However, you do have to buy your ticket for the game. So, but we will be out in Ann Arbor. Some of our colleagues from the alumni relations team will be out there. So if you are interested in that, you can find that by going to foundation.uconn.edu/events, where you can find all of our upcoming activities, including that one, as well as the upcoming next week's game at NC State down in Raleigh. If you're looking to meet Jodi, she will actually be on site. You can meet her in person. You don't have to worry about the virtual. She'll be there at the NC State game. So that's another opportunity.
Now, for both Michigan and NC State, you need to register quickly because those registrations are closing very soon. Michigan State may already be closed. NC State is going to close on Monday. So if you're going to go to either of those events, sign up as soon as possible.
We also have our FIU game down in Miami where tickets are now live. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you can visit those on the foundation.uconn.edu website as well.
And for our California people, we have a Padres game on October 2nd and a San Francisco Giants game on October 1st.
That's right. And I'll probably be out there. So if you're out in the California area, it'd be lovely to meet you all. So for those that I haven't met yet.
Keep checking back on our website. If you're not getting emails, make sure you send myself or Josh your emails so that we can update them on the database, because that's where you'll find out everything that's going on in your region and virtually. But thank you so much for attending this. Please make sure that you fill out your survey that you're going to get, I believe, tomorrow, and put those ideas in that survey, because we really do look at those and utilize the data that we learn from those surveys. So with that, I say cheers. Thank you, Chef Will.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, David. And hopefully we'll be back at WilliBrew for another Cooking with Chef Will session. Have a great night. And that's a wrap, people.